To lead into the topic that we'll talk together for a few minutes before the real topic is to say goodbye and to thank everybody for just a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos. The word connection would be a word I would use. The word authentic, connection, sincere would be words that would be associated with such a Shabbos. I want to tell you about my favorite part of a chasana that I appreciate, and it's a very quiet part of weddings that I want to share with you as a lead-in to the topic that we'll talk to say goodbye. At the chasana, there's something called the chasen's tish. The chasen's tish, today, many people are just busy writing the Tanaim and busy with that. The real purpose of a chasen's tish is to sing Zmiris and Divrei Torah. Historically, before a chasna is a moment of serious Ashras Ashrina. A Bayis B'Yisrael is about a Beis HaMikdash. A place where Ashras Ashrina is about to be built. And to just go into it suddenly is highly inappropriate. And the purpose of the chasen's tish is, historically, you could look up, people darshaned in Yana Yir Shemayim. They spoke about in Yana Yir Shemayim. They sang songs of in Yir Shemayim. You're about to build a bayis, a big zach, and you want all the thoughts to be heilige thoughts. Soif Ma'asev Machshava Tchil. And that was the point of a chasen's tish. I very much am trying in yeshiva by chasnas to restore a chasen's tish to what it was. So I asked the guys to come early. We sing Zmiris. I try to share Divrei Torah and Yana Yir Shemayim, but at least the Zmiris, that's good also. The Zmiris, to sing songs that bring us to Yana Yir Shemayim. At that chasen's tish, we make a kinyan with the chasen. And this is my favorite part of the wedding. This is the beginning. The chasen is Mekabel kinyan, and he obligates himself. In front of Edom, he obligates she'irak susavai nasala yigara, to take care of his mishpacha. Ksuba, taisefes ksuba, but he obligates himself. He makes a kinyan. The rest of his life, if you ask a guy, if you ask a person, you ask a Yiddish man, why are you good to your wife? 3 a.m, why are you running to get medicine if she needs it? A guy answers, because I love her. It's the wrong answer. That's what a guy says, because I love her. And a Yid says, because I made a kinyan. Now we sound pathetic. You sound like you're clueless. That's really very romantic. True love. It sounds crazy. I want to explain why it's gorgeous and to explain it. And that I want to lead into the topic that we'll close with. So we sound pathetic. Why is the guy going 3 a.m, dear? Because I made a kinyan. And it's not pathetic at all. Allow me to explain. Allow me, by a guy, I love you means like it's raining outside. They have no say. It's raining, it's a fact. It's raining outside. By a guy, I love you means you make me feel good. That's what it means. That's the pirush. Wow. And it's true what they're saying. I do love you, make me feel good. But Rahman al-Islam by the guy, then all of a sudden the neighbor, please, I don't want to say. And by the guy faces that I don't love you anymore. You don't make me feel good anymore. And they grapple. The Goyim are all falling out of love. It's this probably nothing in the Western world that more confounds the Westerner. All their music is failed love. She walked out, he walked out, tra-la-la-la-la. I basically summed up. You could do it in rap if you want a rap form. And I Kemat summed up all Goyish music. And the pirush is, because I love you, you have no say. It's raining outside and just, I don't get this thing, and now it's not raining. And by a Yid, we're creators of love. And by a Yid, we don't observe love. I love you by a Yid means that no matter how you make me feel, I'm committed to you. That's what I love you means. If I was a guy, somebody said, I love you, I'd run away. Yeah, now you love. By a Yid, I love you means no matter how you make me feel, I'm committed to you. That's what it means, the pirush of I love you. It's not a joke at all. When a guy gets up 3 a.m, it's because I'm committed to you. And we create love together. We create good feelings because I'm committed. I want a school to say I love you to a child. If the word love is, everybody says love, love. They don't know what the word love means. I want a school to say I love you to a child doesn't mean you make us feel good, you make us look good. I love you. I love you means I'm committed, no matter how you make me feel, I'm committed to you. That's what I love you means. So I like that Kinyan. The whole marriage is built on that Kinyan. He was Makabel Kinyan. It's fascinating that such a powerful part of the wedding the guests don't know about. The Kala's not even there. It's not even in front of her. The guy makes a Kinyan, a commitment. He commits. And at that moment, he makes a Kinyan. He's Makabel Kinyan. I have a private thing. I'll give excuses why I'm not being Mesader. If I don't believe a chassan's capable of emotionally supporting a wife, I won't be Mesader. I'll give an excuse. I'm busy, this, that. I won't be Mesader because I don't want to officiate over a lie. And a man commits to physically and emotionally support. It's a commitment. Sheiraksu savay nasala yigara. And it says in the Ksuba, I'm going to be yakir, I'm going to value, give cover to somebody, is the emotional support to somebody. And that's the sugya that I want to talk as a goodbye, is the sugya of learning to emotionally support somebody. Learning to emotionally support. We could physically support. You noticed here, a lot of the sessions we were sitting right in the middle, and this one was sitting right facing the men. The men have a tougher time than the women on this. To stay emotionally involved in the journey of our children is murder. I could tell you for me that I've been called out by Bachram, by my children, of trying to make them happy and cheering them up, but not being there when they're crying, not staying in that moment. To emotionally support is difficult. It means we have to know, we have to be able to ourselves be in the moment, feel and learn how to feel and learn how to process feelings, and then to be there for our children. This is not newfangled stuff. This is not, psychology is not needed. Just learn, just Torah. Sheirak susavay nasala yigara. That there's an absolute obligation to physically and emotionally support is an obligation. With our children, we send our children off to schools. Wonderful place. Schools, people are trying and doing. And again, we could have our frustrations, and it's not the point to make any referendum on schools. What I wanna say to everybody here is we can't give over. We need to emotionally support our children. They have one father, one mother, a tata and a mama. And tati and mami have to emotionally support. We cannot rely on schools, the word nurture, and to emotionally support. It's an agenda, all three of us. Rav Scott Friedman, somebody who's a man on a mission and feels that we have to add more nurture in schools, and he's on fire with this mission, on fire. And all three of us, Rabbi Bensoussan, this is something, if we describe the mission, Rabbi Bensoussan is somebody who has a school in Cleveland. We're all involved in schools. And all of us, this point of schools being more emotionally supportive, we all believe, but that's not what the discussion I want. Because that's a discussion for principals, and schools have to look at themselves and learn how we can better nurture, but a school will never replace a parent. V'shinantam levanecha, Rabbi Shua ben Gamla made schools. A Rebbe has to try, and that we could talk about are our schools being nurturing enough, and that could be a whole discussion that we have to ask. But as parents, that the job of nurturing our children and leaning in emotionally and being there and really trying hard to lean in to their story and to what's going on, the word nurture and emotionally supporting is something we have to do as parents. And certainly we're sending to schools, and that's something we all do from young ages, but certainly not relying on that and giving our own nurture to our children is something extremely important, the sugya. Now, I want to talk about one component of nurturing a kid. I want to talk about one aspect in this sugya of nurturing. It's very relevant in schools, and again, I'm more talking to parents and want to focus there. I want to talk, and then I'll pass the ball. I'm hogging a little right now. But I want to talk about the topic codependence for a very specific reason to us in this room. So I want to talk, the sugya of codependence we could speak about for the next year. It's a long, long sugya. I want to say one aspect of codependence for a specific reason about us parents. Some people here know, I assume most people here know what codependence. If you don't, that's fine too. But to give you a little picture of like codependence, the classic and the easiest picture of codependence. A group of kids are in the 7-Eleven, the local 7-Eleven. I guess that's something, I don't know why I'm so fixated on 7-Eleven, but let's make that the place where the irony is I come from a city where there's not, after 8 o'clock, there are no restaurants. And like the Gishmat, my daughter asked me, and that's why I'm hanging out in my 7-Eleven. So I'm like, it's me and my daughter. And nothing bad has gone down in 7-Eleven in Waterbury. But it's the only thing open after 8. And at night she wants a Slurpee. So we go to 7-Eleven together and we've gotten a Slurpee. So I don't know why I'm so fixated with 7-Eleven. I guess that's because the only thing open is Slurpee. Yeah, it's what we got. It's what, you know. Place they all went. The months used to be closed, everything was closed. Only the 7-Eleven was open. So that's where all the kids went. Give it to Rabbi Kalish to open up the speech. I'm the one, if in many years it's a problem, you'll know I started it. Me and my daughter. Yeah, okay. So, the bottom line is that their kids, let's say their kids hanging out there, struggling. There are two types of people who come in to help the kid, and the kids know it themselves. There's the type of older person who doesn't have a good marriage, doesn't have good friendships, is in trouble himself, maybe even an addict, and he's giving to youngsters. It's very powerful to take care of youngsters, and it feels good. And he uses that giving and the kids needing him for rides and all different things to feel good. Very, very dangerous. That's called a codependent relationship. Even when he gives a hug to the youngsters, he wants a hug and needs the hug. And when you use a relationship to a youngster to get what you're not supposed to get, that's codependence. Many a bacher has shown me relationships that they've had, a bacher who's struggling, which I would define as codependent relationships. And they end up a lot of emotional hurt. That long text, after all I do for you, you never thank me back, nonsense and things that are extremely unhealthy and can be damaging. And again, not to protect and not to bring another sugis. Now we have a new thing to worry about. No, not at all. Emotionally support our children and we'll be their support, and then they'll be capable of dealing with all different relationships. That's not what I want to bring out. But a codependent relationship is when the giver tries to get something from the relationship that he's not supposed to. That's no shaykhs. Now, it's normal. Every single person who's in chinuch could get insulted by your kid. I would not hire a Rabbi who doesn't get insulted by the guys. Because if you don't get insulted, it means you're a professor who's arrogant, who doesn't want a connection. So it doesn't bother what they say. I want a Rebbe who gets insulted and then doesn't need the guys to apologize. You know why? He has a good marriage. He has his own hobbies and outlets. He's a healthy human being. And has the ability not to be a codependent, to give, and to give unconditionally. And then, yes, sometimes all of us, and the reason why am I bring up codependence? Because I want to say about us parents could be codependents also. And when I talk about emotionally supporting, and it's been a big theme this Shabbos, is emotionally caring for ourselves. We have to have the ability that our kids don't have to apologize to us. Not because we're so lenient. So it sounds like you come here as like the liberal Shabbos. I want to explain what's going on here. We spoke about their parents, beautiful, like really big people. There's a family here, the Pollocks. I look up, I'm a Talmud of them. They're big people, big people. The sugya is not, people have a challenge with child rearing, and then we like give up our morals, and I used to hold the Cholav Yisrael, I let Cholav Stam. I used to not have a television, I let him have a television. That's, if you think that's the sugya, then I don't know where you were this Shabbos. The sugya is people becoming big, godly, expanding, more understanding, big people, gedolim. The word godless, Rashi says, is midas tovcha, is to be expansive, to see past ourselves. That's the sugya. The sugya is a person becoming a gadol. And their gedolim here, big people who've expanded remarkable ways of gadlus, of seeing another perspective, the need of somebody else, just getting expansive. That's the sugya. When we talk about here not asking your kids, I'm angry at them. When we're you, we all get angry at our children, really angry. And it's the unspoken part when our kid's struggling is I'm mad at him. What he's done to the house. I had a beautiful house and he's brought us to our knees. I am mad at him. And then somebody comes and says, you're not allowed to, he doesn't have to apologize. So everything like favors the kid. It's all about us. By the way, sometimes the best aid says the father, sometimes the father has to play more tennis. The mother has to draw more, maybe play more tennis herself. Each person has to know how to emotionally care for themselves. That's not a kula. I never sometimes in Chinuch you have the martyr, the Rabbi who's like such a martyr. Any Rabbi by me laughs. When I spoke, Rav Scott and I were talking, anybody says to her, I'm Mekani Olam Haba, I just laugh. I always think about that line when I'm in the middle of like a really intense volleyball tournament and I'm like grinding out, it's like 14 up, and the line goes on, I'm Mekani Olam Haba. And then I finish the tournament, my point is that it's not martyrdom. I don't want somebody who's a martyr. At all. I want somebody who takes good care of himself and is a happy person living life beautifully, a beautiful life, and sharing it with somebody else. You're allowed to enjoy. I love having the zchus of teaching Torah to youngsters, of encouraging somebody, of creating relationship and friendship. It's delightful. It's wonderful. You're not allowed to take from it what it's not supposed to provide. Is not good for you. It's not good for you. We can't fill a hole that we may have had from a difficult relationship to mama, or a difficult relationship to tata, or a difficult relationship, all different difficult relationships, and ask this to fill that. That's dangerous. You're asking something to be what it's not supposed to be. And this sugya of not wanting our kids to apologize, we get insulted by our kids. Speak it out. If you don't get insulted by your kid, then I don't know what that would be silly. You're not invested. You're not emotionally attached. Of course, you're going to get insulted. But then the ability ourselves not to be codependent. So make sure we have our own relationships worked out, our own inners worked out, and then we don't take from a beautiful relationship of giving that's powerful and precious and special and deep, but we're not trying to get what's not supposed to be gotten. That's the healthy, powerful, healthy relationship that we're zeicha and capable of. When we can give in this way, we can give in this powerful, healthy way of yes, being insulted all the time. Of course you would be. And then, yes, being able to heal and that going on that walk and healing, we're a powerful giver for our children. The ones who get the most, of course, a person's a giver. That's the Tachlis HaChaim. Reb Dessler wrote the Kuntres HaChesed. That's the powerful, healthy giver that we're visualizing. So that was a lot of the takeaway to me of this precious Shabbos that we were zeicha to, is the person himself leaning into their own emotional needs, their own sugya, their own journey, in healthy, powerful ways, all of us. Many parents ask, what can I do for my son? Play more tennis. That's the answer, in a very real way. A mother, what can I do? That's a very, very real thing. Take care of our own needs in order that we can then lean in powerfully to our kids' needs.
I just want to add to what Rabbi Kalish said. A few thoughts come to mind. So one of them is actually a story about myself. When I was a teenager, I was a very difficult teenager. You could ask my parents. And I'm a difficult adult also. And when I was a teenager, I remember I got very upset at, I think it was my father, probably both my parents at the time. And I think I cursed my father out. And I later felt bad about it. And I went to apologize to him. I've only told the story a few times. My father probably doesn't even remember the story. And I went to apologize, and my father said something amazing to me, which at the time I don't know that I understood even how profound it was. Sometimes someone speaks, I'm listening to Rabbi Kalish speak, and he's bringing me back to work I did 20 years ago in my own life. And sometimes you take things for granted and you don't even appreciate the depth of what's being said. And I cursed him out, and I later went back and I apologized, and my father said to me, "You don't have to apologize to me. I know you were just upset." And when Rabbi Kalish said that, it brought me back to that experience, and I can tell you that, I always say, I try to be a good father, I try to be a good Rabbi, but I always say, some things that come easier for me than others, it's simply because I was given it. I had someone who showed me how to do that. There are other things I'm not good at, and people didn't give that to me. Some people inherit money, other people inherit other things. So, it's easy for me to sit here and say, to do such a thing when someone did that for me, I have that ability. But I do want to add something. So I'm a big chassid of someone named Dr. Bensoussan. I consider him my Rabbi and my mentor, really. And he has a book that everybody should buy on Amazon, in my opinion. I forgot what it's called, but just look up Dr. Sorotskin. He has a website. It's free. You don't need to buy the book. It's all free, actually. And he says something amazing, and I really have integrated it into my life. I probably relate to it because my father, really lived this mantra. And he always said that nachas is a very dirty word. Nachas is a very, very dirty word. We hear people say all the time, you should have nachas from your children. So I'll tell you, I always say at my simchas for my own children, I always say that my wife and I should give nachas to my children. That it's our responsibility to give nachas, not our responsibility to get nachas. We don't have children in order that they should give us nachas. We have children that we should give them nachas. The way that we act, the way that we behave, the way that we treat them. Dr. Sorotskin has a very beautiful story he tells that a father came over to him. He said, how do I teach my children to have midos? So he said, well, what do you mean by midos? Tell me exactly what you're really asking. So he said, well, my kids don't say please and thank you ever to me. So he said, well, can I just ask you a very frank question? Do you say please and thank you to your own children? And he was like, no, I don't think so. He was like, well, then they're not going to say it to you. I really do believe that children reflect back that which they receive. I learned something very profound this Shabbos. It's funny, it sounds cliche, but I thought I came here to give, and I came here and I really took away something very profound. I learned two things. One thing that I knew, but now I know in a much deeper way. I was never someone that was really attuned to neglect, because I was not someone who was ever neglected. I was, always well-liked. I had a lot of friends. I was an athlete. I got a lot of attention growing up. So maybe I didn't relate or understand how deeply painful it is to be neglected. I also didn't realize how neglect doesn't have to mean neglect. Neglect can simply mean not getting as much attention as your sibling. I didn't know that, to be honest. I thought, okay, so this one gets a little more attention, that one gets a little less. And I will say in yeshivas, you find this a lot. You find guys who get very angry at the yeshiva, rightfully so, because they feel they're not getting the attention of another child. That's why you'll find that, sometimes I'm blown away. Why does this kid like this school? And the answer is obvious. He gets a tremendous amount of positive attention. A tremendous amount of it. So whether the school's accomplishing anything or doing anything good, it doesn't matter. They're getting positive attention. And they like that part of the school. And I tell you, I'm part of a new yeshiva Rabbi Kalish mentioned called Or Yisrael of Tenafly. It opened last year, and we started with 20 boys. And this year it grew in a year to 70. And it was actually terrible, to be honest, because it's hurt the place in a lot of ways. And I'm learning that. I'm no longer able to give the kind of attention I need to every single Talmud. I haven't been able to give.
If I can interject for 1 second, they're doing amazing. Just want to throw that out there. They're doing amazing, and they're doing amazing work. As the outsider, I can say that.
Yeah, beyond the surface. Very good. Thank you. That's very kind. Well, maybe we're doing amazing for some kids, but my expectation is 100% success. And if a kid doesn't feel that he is being successful, then that's on me. But we have a tagline that relates back to what Rabbi Kalish said, which says, and I'll tell you a funny story about this, a great story. So we have a tagline on all my emails that says, students can't fail, only we can. So I get two different attitudes about this. Some people get very upset about this. You're removing all accountability from children. You're not teaching children to have any kind of accountability. I mean, what kind of message is this? That only you could fail, they can't fail. And it really goes back to what I learned from Dr. Sorotskin and really my parents, I guess, which is the only way to teach accountability is by having accountability. You don't teach accountability by telling someone else to be accountable. There's a very, very beautiful, I'm going to misquote it to some extent, but there's a beautiful Moshe Feinstein, I believe, that he says that in Parshas Vayera, which is my bar mitzvah parsha, actually, I think when Avram Avinu asks Yishmael to help him to go get food and water for the Malachim, so I think Rashi tells us that because the food came directly from Avram, he got it himself, the man came directly from Shammai, Mida Keneged Mida. But because Yishmael went and got the water, so it had to come through some other way. So Moshe asks a great kasha, what did Avram Avinu do wrong? What was so, worst case, he wanted him to be part of the mitzvah. It's not even like he said to him, you go and do it. He said, come with me. You would think this would be the greatest form of chinuch. I'm going to do it, and you're going to do it. And Moshe says something that's unbelievable. He says, because the only chinuch is doing it yourself.
Wow.
That's the only chinuch. Now, I was always bothered. I'm not here, God forbid, to talk about other places. It always bothered me that a Rebbe would walk around during davening while he was davening, taking attendance of all the boys. I always wondered, what kind of message are these kids getting? He doesn't have to daven. It's more important that he worries that you're davening. If a Rebbe would see if a Talmud would see his Rebbe really daven and pour his heart out, he would see what davening looks like. He would see what davening is really about. I think really the biggest problem I find, teenagers are smarter than most adults. They're very real and they're raw. And they don't have to worry about public perception or what the neighbors will say. They say it the way it is. I think very often they feel they're being used, to be honest, by the schools. How are you going to make the school look? I always tell my Talmidim, I don't care about Or Yisrael. I don't care if it burns to the ground. To be honest, I think I'm a pretty talented mechanech. I'm sure I could find another job. I don't need Or Yisrael to exist. But I need all these kids, all these boys, to feel loved, to be who they are. And I want to add one more thing. I said this once and I got pushback. But before I tell you that, I have to tell you a funny thing about the other thing. So, Rabbi Yablok, who started the yeshiva with me, is a wonderful person. Rabbi Asher Yablok, he called me one night and he said, Steph, tell you, I got a call from a parent in the community. They were very upset by the tagline. They felt we should change it, that students can't fail, only we can. So I said, okay, I'm sorry they feel that way. I'd be happy to talk to them. If they want to call me, I'd be more than happy to discuss it. But to be honest, everyone has an opinion, and unless you really understand where they're coming from, you don't really know what they're saying anyway. I kid you not, probably an hour later, I got a random phone call from a woman I never met. And she said, I'm going crazy. I just found your website. I've never seen such a tagline in my life. I'm so happy somebody gets it. So, you could spend your whole life driving yourself crazy to please everybody. This one, that one. So I'll please this one, and then I'll make this one upset. But the only thing that really matters is doing Ratzon Hashem, is to do what the right thing is. To do the right thing. Now I lost my train of thought about the other story I wanted to tell you.
Take your time.
What was I saying?
Sound like a good one.
I have no idea. Now I remember. Go ahead. See, positive
Little
reinforcement.
chizuk.
There you go.
There you go.
So it goes a long way. So, no, now I remember the story. So we had Nachum Siegel from JM and Yam come to our yeshiva and interview some of us, and I was on there. And he kind of asked me, what's your goal? What do you want to see happen with the Bachrim, with the boys here? I said, I really only have one goal, and again, I can tell you there were people who didn't like what I said. I said, my only goal is that the boys should know that I unconditionally love them, appreciate them, value them, really admire them. And my hope is, from that, they will then consider that I live my life in a way that I love Yiddishkeit, that to me, Torah is the only thing in the world that matters. It's the only way to live your life. It's the only way to really have it's the only truth in the world. And I hope they will consider that one day. And if they do not, I will love them all the same. And I always tell them, you know what? I would love for you to win the lottery also. Do you hate me for that? You know what I'm saying? I hope you win the lottery. And if you don't, it's okay. I'll love you all the same. I don't want you to win the lottery to give us money. I don't care. You don't have to give us money. I just want you to win the lottery because I love you and I want what's good for you. And because I want what's good for you, I know this is the only good in the world. The only. And I want you to have it. But if you don't want it, that's fine. That's your life to live. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I'm here to tell you how I live my life. And you decide how to live your life, and I will love you all the same. It doesn't matter to me. And I'll tell you something else. I have a daughter. I have 5 daughters, actually. And so one of them, I remember many, many years ago, she came home. Our kids go. So, he's talking about she's kind of my own hazard.
Rabbi cut and let's edit.
So I had a daughter who came home from, they go to like mainstream Beis Yaakov's, and and personally I'm just saying I love the school they go to. I have a lot of appreciation for their school, for the Yeshiva Tana Passaic. But my daughter came home. She was very young. She was very upset. And I was talking to her in her bed one night. She was very young. And I asked her what's bothering her. She told me that in davening, she doesn't like davening in school. And I said, what's wrong? So she said, Mora gives out stickers. Sometimes I daven really beautifully and I don't get a sticker. And sometimes I don't want to daven. And then, I feel bad that I don't get a sticker. And my friend gets a sticker and I don't get a sticker. All normal, healthy feelings of a child. And I said to my daughter, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to buy you a book of stickers. So she said to me, you mean if I daven nicely, you're going to buy me a book of stickers? And I said, no. I'm just going to buy you a book of stickers. I said, if you want to daven, that's between you and Hashem. Nobody can tell you whether you should daven or not. Only you and Hashem. You come home, you go to school. If you don't want to go to school for davening, that's fine also. You could stay home. And Baruch Hashem, it helped tremendously. This daughter, all my, Baruch Hashem, Bli Anhara, my children are great daveners because their mother's an unbelievable davener and they watch her daven every day in the house. So, they have a wonderful role model in that way. But this daughter, certainly has a very, very special place in her heart about tefillah. And this idea of unconditional love, it's not a trick. I just want to be clear. It's not a tool. I'm not trying to manipulate someone to get where I am. It's really not. Hashem loves all of His children, no matter what. And Hashem knows what goes on inside the heart of every single human being, every Jew. He knows. And it's our job to love our children unconditionally. And what does that even mean? If my kid doesn't daven, I don't love them? Like, what does that have to do with me even? That's between them and Hashem. And if my kid doesn't make enough money, should I not like them also? Like, what does that have to do with anything? That's their business. My business is to love my child. My business is to like my child. My business is to admire my child. My business is to see my child for who they are. And my children are different. My oldest, she's straight A, nothing like me. She's stressing out at home, doing all her work. I'm like, stop doing your homework. It's stressing you out. What are you doing? My wife's like, leave her alone. I'm like, stop. It's driving you crazy, And my second one, she can't stand homework, She's like, Tati, start an Or for girls. I want to go to Or we don't have homework. That's a big thing. Ramatziel Salman Shlita, who's really my Rabbi in Chinuch. That's the other book I tell every person really needs to read, With Hearts Full of Love. It really touches on what Rabbi Kalish said, which is, it's not a psychology book, it's a book of Torah. The whole thing is Torah. And Ramatziel says in there that school is not home. He has a whole chapter. And you should know, I started all of my classes, my whole year, when I used to teach every day, give a shiur, with this chapter. It's called School is not home is not school, excuse me. It talks about a parent should not make their kids do their homework. That's what the Mashgiach says. He says it creates such tension in the home. Such tension. And then he says parents become the bad guy. And I'm telling you, I've never allowed, I love my wife, she's wonderful. I never allow her to make them do their homework, so she somehow gets them to do it, I don't know how. But I won't allow it. And we have a shita in our yeshiva, there is no homework for general studies also. There's no homework. When a boy goes home, they have to be home. Home has to be a place that they love. They have to love being home. They have to love being with their parents. They have to love spending time at home with their friends, running around, being kids. There's a very famous Maisa. I misunderstood it for many years. I think I have a better understanding of it today. Very famous Maisa that Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, there was a child, one of his grandchildren, I guess, someone came over to speak with him, and the grandchild hopped onto the table and was standing, dancing on the table. And I always remind my wife of this story. It doesn't work still, but nonetheless. And so the person who was there meeting with Rabbi Yaakov, he said, with all due respect, what kind of chinuch is it to have a child standing on a table? So Rabbi Yaakov said, chinuch doesn't mean controlling your child. I promise you, this child at 15 will not be standing on a table. You don't have to worry about it. That's not called chinuch. That's not chinuch. Chinuch means, in my opinion, it's not my opinion, I have no opinions, from what I've learned, chinuch means really to be a loving person, and through that, the outpouring will be that you become someone that people say, I want to live my life just like this, like my mother, my father. I want to live such a life. But if the mother and father is a bitter, angry person all the time, why would they want to live that life? Why would they want that? If Yiddishkeit, that's the famous story of Ramosha Feinstein, right? That they say that by Ramosha, that many, many years ago, a lot of children went off the derech, some stayed on, some went off, and they asked Ramosha, what was the nafkamina, right? Why did some stay on and why did some go off? And he said, because a lot of parents said, again, I'm not judging, chalila, judging, And really the answer is what Rabbi Kalish said about feeling whole within ourselves, and that's the truth, meaning we don't need to work on our kids, we need to work on ourselves. That's really the truth. But Ramosha said, because Shvetz is a Yid, that people would say it's so hard to be a Yid. And if it's hard to be a Yid, why does the next generation want to be a Yid? But if the greatest thing in the world is to be a Yid, then of course that's what they're going to want. But only if they really feel that way, only if they really experience that. Only if Shabbos really feels like something, something special. Only if they see in the home that this is happiness, this is godless. But if the relationship is tense, you didn't daven, you didn't wash Tengelwasser, you didn't this, you didn't that. Why would they want it? And then we're stuck with the problem. We have to then convince them somehow. No, this is really good for you. You don't realize it's good for you. It's a bitter pill, but it's good for you. We all have to do hard things in life. I've heard that one a lot of times. Okay, we all do things we don't like to do. Okay, but your whole life, every day, that's how you're going to live your life. So I'll just end with one last point. I'm sorry for speaking so long. So my takeaway from this Shabbos, though, was really this, though. I knew we had to like our children. I knew it wasn't enough to love them. But I didn't know we had to like, let me say it differently. I didn't realize, and It's funny. It's because I didn't read the Chazon Ish properly. I think the Chazon Ish is Lashon. I don't have it in front of me. I said it to someone yesterday, but he says we don't need warmth and love. I could look it up, but I think he says we need, value. We need to value them. We need to appreciate them. We need to admire them. It's not enough even to like, maybe. It has to be admiration. You know, I know how Rabbi Kalish's Talmidim feel about him, and I'm sure Rabbi Yossi, his Talmidim. That's how we have to feel about our children, every single one of them. They have to be gedolim in our eyes. You know, I don't know, I don't think gedolim became gedolim thinking I want to be a gadol. I don't think, at least. It would seem very unhealthy to me. But certainly our children have to be gedolim in our eyes, every single one of them. And any child who doesn't feel that way is going to struggle. They're going to struggle. And you know why? Because you know what they say to themselves subconsciously? If my own parents don't think I'm the greatest, why should anybody else? And you know what happens? They meet a girl or a guy, and they tell them they're the greatest, even if it's for 10 seconds. And I can't get over some of the stories I hear. It's so stupid, you know? They believe the guy, you know? Like, really? But you know what? For 10 seconds, they felt like they were the greatest person in the world. That's what I walk away with. You know, I love all my children. At Baruch Hashem, we have 7 children. They're all wonderful. I don't have a favorite. I love them all. But I reflecting, my wife and I were talking, I could see some of them need more time. Some of them need more admiration. Even thinking that I like them. Even thinking, you know, I certainly have nothing negative. But maybe not even recognizing how great they are isn't enough. And I'm walking away with a commitment. I told my wife that once a week moving forward, I'm going to spend one night with my wife going out for pizza with one child once a week. And the kids who I feel do need more of that admiration, I plan to give to them when I get home. Because the reality is, children can't fail, only I can. Shkar.
Okay, I'm not going to say my tagline of, I'm not going to take a lot of time. Lied to too many crowds over the course of Shabbos. It's not, at this point already, it's just pathological. It's not. One of my Talmidim, as Rav Scott was speaking, I was reminded of so many things. I have a yeshiva in Cleveland, Yeshiva High School of Cleveland. It's a very small school. We're more of a preventative school. Boys who were in the mainstream yeshivas, but they couldn't be celebrated in the mainstream. Not the mainstream's fault, not their fault. They just couldn't be celebrated in the mainstream, and that would have led to them just falling between the cracks and everything. So we're there, and I love these boys, but that line comes up a lot. You know, the line of Rabbi, when we can't do something, or we struggle with our dorm, right? We have boarding houses, and it's very difficult, especially in the Cleveland winter, to get the boys from the boarding houses to the dorm, back to the boarding houses to the dorm. You know, we're trying to have a dorm or have a building. Would be great also, but to have a building with a. So I was schmoozing with the guys about the frustration. I love sharing with my boys the frustration that yeshiva is going through. I remember being a teenager when the Rabbi would go into their closed door meetings, and it was so alienating. Because if you're going to do that, I hear, do it when I'm not here. It was very alien. Now, we need to have meetings that we can't discuss in front of the guys, obviously. But not when the boys are around. It's like your children. If you have that thing that you gotta, every guy's worst nightmare, every man's anxiety is when the wife says to him right before the kids come home, "We need to talk." And then the kids come home after they go to sleep. And it's like, I can't breathe. What time do they go to sleep? I can't do this for 4 hours? You crazy? Melatonin. Get the melatonin out. We're knocking them out early tonight. That's not. So but I was sharing with my Talmidim the struggle of, because they were sharing with me also that it's difficult. And we were sharing this, and one of the boys said to me, "Rebbe, don't worry about it. After I get out of here, and after I don't know if you said it like that, it sounds like prison. But all right, after I move on and after I make my money, right? It's a concept of a kid's money, by the way. Teenagers still have that same concept of a money, right? They all think that with that pizza shop job, they're going to move out, they're going to get an apartment, they're going to get their insurance, they're going to buy a car, they all have that, they still have that concept of money. And he said, when I get $1 million, Rabbi, I'm like, you can give it all to me, it still won't help. It's like, when I get my $1 million, Rabbi, I'm telling you, I'm going to build us a building, I'm going to get us a dorm. And I said to him, Tzaddik, I don't need your $1 million. You already gave me your $1 million. You showed up. You're here. This is worth so much more than that. I don't need your $1 million later. And I can't stand it when guys say it, because then I know I'm doing something wrong. I love that they feel connected and they feel a shiva that they want to give back. That's beautiful. But the ones that you see in their eyes feel that they have to pay you for this. They have to give back. They don't feel that you're doing this because you're so in love with what's happening. They don't feel you're gaining enough from it. I tell my boys all the time, it's very cliched, but it's so true. Every single year, I know I'm walking out a different person from that year. I'm going to meet some kid and I'm going to learn something I never knew. I used to give the boys brachas Friday night. Around the Shabbos table, we'll give brachas Friday night. I could do for my kids. My kids go first, and the boys know my kids have their seats on the table, and no one's allowed to touch the seat. It gets funny when there's other guests over there, and someone tries to sit in like my 4-year-old daughter's seat, and they're like, actually, that's Eliana's seat. And I'm like, what? And he's like, Eliana's taking your seat, and she comes and she's like, that's my seat. Like, fine. So I go around and I give brachas to all the boys Friday night. And one Friday night, I'm going around, I'm giving brachas. I go up to one boy, and I'm just going one boy to the next. Go up to one boy, I'm about to give him a bracha, and he moves out from under my hand, which is very, very common. He was a new kid. Moves out from under. He was happened to have been a local boy, a boy that was local to Cleveland, which most of my boys aren't. He moved out from under my hand, and he goes, oh, it's okay, Rabbi. My parents already gave me a bracha. And my heart broke. This kid taught me such an enormous lesson. If he thinks that I'm trying to give him a bracha instead of his parents, the other guys might be thinking that also. Who in the world do I think I am? I was giving him a bracha as a Rebbe. I was not. And I switched it up. We do it by Shal Shudas now. Because no one usually, no one questions it. And when I go up and put my hand on the head, they're like, what? Oh, okay. And no one's ready for it. They don't. But everyone gave him Friday night because they're used to their parents doing it. I should technically be a number. I went to a very good elementary school, but when I was growing up, it was still very in style to embarrass a kid, then hit him, then embarrass him again, and then really to drill it home, have him like stand up for the rest of the class, and no one forgets. And so that to make sure that the trauma is like deep-seated in there, to make sure they would have you stand up. So that would happen constantly, daily. I would get smacked, or what do you call it? And I remember one time, it was the 7th grade already, so like we were a little bit of an older kid. One of the Rabbeim from the other class, who I didn't know, I never said 3 words to. I mamish have never said 3 words to this person, but the way he looked at me in the hallways, I think it was because I had a chup, which if he saw me speak now, he'd be like, serves you right! You see what happens? The Rabbi Shalom finally exacted his revenge, you know? He'd be thrilled to see me now. But every time he would walk by me in the hallway, he would give me this look, and he pulled me over one day and he said to me, I heard. So we walked into the office and I sat down in a chair, and because I was used to it, like I had my chair in the office that I would sit in, and then they would sit and we would do the thing. And the good days were when the principal had his computer screen. He just got a computer in schools then, and he had his computer screen turned around, And they used to have, remember what a screensaver is? I don't know if anyone has screensavers on things. A screensaver, and it was these shapes that would spin around each other. And it was mind-blowing to me. We didn't have a computer at home. It was mind-blowing to me, this thing. And I would sit there watching it, and I could space out. Like, you have no idea how badly I could space out. And I'm sitting there watching. I never listened to a word anyone said while that computer screamed. I would just nod and agree and periodically say, I'm sorry. And so this Rebbe comes in, and I sit down, and he says, yeah, that makes sense. And I said, he's like, you're going to sit down before the Rebbe? Okay. Are you the Rebbe? I said, no. He said, would you like to sit in the Rebbe's seat then, maybe? I said, no. We already accomplished this, I think. So he says, stand up. So I stand up, and he says, I'm not going to sit in a room with you. I'm like, fantastic. And he said, I'm not going to sit in a room with you. And my was so bad that I was relieved. I was like, oh, good, this is going to take long. Can get back to lunch. And he goes, which is another thing from a Chanukah. If it's a long conversation, obviously you have to do it during recess. But leave a kid's recess time alone. You want to speak to a kid? Call him at home. Call him up. Let his mother tell him, your Rebbe's on the phone for you. He wants to speak to you. The kid will feel like a million, especially if you're telling him something good. Pull him out during class and tell him, I'm sorry, I couldn't wait till after class. That was incredible what you just did. That was amazing. So he turns to me and he goes, I heard you're hanging out. Oh, okay. I just realized, okay. It's a dangerous story, I just realized. I heard you're hanging out with Maishi. Maishi's brother is actually here. I just realized. I heard you hanging out with Maishi. And I said, yeah, he's a new boy. What do you call it? He said, no, not yeah, no. I said, the answer is yeah, though I don't know what to do right now. And he goes, you are not to see that boy outside of yeshiva anymore. And there was 1 second where I felt so good. I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. I don't even know this guy. This kid that he's talking about is in his class. And the kid he was a little bit of, you could tell, he was a transformer of the year. He probably got him a pull. He was a little bit of a troublemaker. And he said, and he was trying to protect me. So he's like, you're not hanging out with that kid anymore. I said, okay. And back then it was like, the Rebbe's word is the Rebbe's word. So I said, okay. Okay. I was thinking to myself, I don't know what I'm going to say to this kid, but okay, fine. And he said, because you're not going to ruin that neshama. I'm like, and it took like a minute for it to even process. I was like, wait a second. Is anyone else in here? There were so many other stories that I went for first because it made no sense that someone would do that. I want to tell you something. I went home. It was back in the day before people, although when I was a kid, our two big fears were being kidnapped and quicksand. Those were our two big fears. Quicksand was a big thing. I don't know. Bugs Bunny almost died a whole bunch of times because of quicksand. Nowadays, I don't hear about it anymore. I don't know anyone, and it's our big fear. When a kid goes missing, we're like, he got kidnapped. I don't know the last time you knew anyone that was kidnapped. I don't know. It's like so many other things happen daily that it's a problem. But okay. So fine. But we used to go home by ourselves. I would go from Borough Park to Brooklyn. Okay, at least everyone else is still listening. Borough Park to Flatbush. I'm a real Brooklyner, you have to understand. Borough Park to Flatbush, and we take the B9 bus, and I would walk, I get on the B9, be going home, and I remember I was sitting on the bus, and I just started laughing to myself. Now, this isn't a rare occurrence, by the way. If ever you see me walking down the street, my wife asks me to wear earpods, even if they're dead. She said, because then no one's going to think you're insane when you're walking and you're laughing for no reason when no one's around and you're talking to yourself. So I'm on the bus, and I start laughing to myself. And it was probably the first moment that I realized what it means to have a home and what it means to have a school. I was laughing at myself, or I was laughing with myself, because I was like, that guy's crazy. That guy's so crazy. And I was afraid to tell my parents, but I want you to know why I was afraid to tell my parents. I came home. I was completely not gyrus what this guy said to me at all. Like, it didn't even... This is probably one of the first times I'm even bringing up that story again. And not out of a traumatic thing. It has been an unimportant event in my life. And I remember walking in, and I wanted to tell my mother, because it was like meeting a crazy person on the subway. It was like, you're not going to believe what this guy was doing. Like, I wanted to tell my mother, but I knew my mother would get in her car. She would drive down to that school and wait. And the minute that guy, or anyone who looked like him, came out of that building, she'd run him over, back up, run him over again. She would call the ambulance for him, make sure he gets proper medical attention, have him wait for him to do physical therapy, be healthy, come back out, wait outside the hospital, and go for a second. Without a question in my mind, I was worried about this crazy person's life, and I was legitimately worried for him. So I didn't say anything to my mother. Oh, yeah. Very good. Yes. For everyone out there that's like, these Moroccan ladies. My mother is Ashkenaz. She is superbly Ashkenaz. But she's got the heart of a Moroccan. So that's why anyone always said that Moroccan men can be very violent, can be very, what do you call it? And, I'm like, why don't you go see a Moroccan couple for a second? You tell me that we're worried about him, beating up on it. They're tough, these ladies. So yeah, you got that I abandoned that joke halfway through. Good. My point is that right now, the way I view it, and schools are incredible, but the way I view it with my own children, as what Scott was saying, is that, and Rabbi Kalish touched upon, I'm going to say it mean, but schools are a glorified babysitting service for me. That's what it is. They are not there to build my child. They're not even there to talk to my kid. They are not there to do anything but give him some information that he's never going to use again. Think about the valedictorian in your school. You have any idea where that person is right now? They peaked way too early in life. They got to speak at the end. They quoted a few people, thanked their parents, thanked their, and said something condescending like, and to my chaverim yakarim, from here it is up and beyond. I could have YouTubed this. I didn't have to show up. This could have been in an email. You could have sent everyone an email. We could have done it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the kid that achieves well. It's beautiful. But what did he do with that afterwards? But the kid who got the experiences? That kid walks out a wellspring of love, of information, of experience. I'm going to end with this. When I was in Eretz Yisrael, I'm dyslexic by blessing and nature, and I'm ADD. I don't know. I have a bunch of things I carry with me, just to impress people. So it's my chasna shtick. I'm dyslexic. So I had a fear. I was very worried with my first son that reading, if you're a boy in a yeshiva and you can't read, your life is going to take we're the people of the book. If you can't read it, it's a big problem. So I was very worried. And when my son first went into Cheder in Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Hillel was his Rebbe. There's something, I think Rabbi Kalish or Scott will definitely agree, when you meet a Rebbe, even a fourth grade Rebbe, not even, I love how people downplay a grade school Rebbe or an elementary school Rebbe. These people do more kiruv and save more lives and have the opportunity to do that on a daily basis. But when you meet a Rebbe, especially a Rebbe of young children, that loves what he does, that is so on fire about what he does. This Rebbe one time told me, this Rebbe Hillel, he told me, he said there's a machsan, a storeroom, in a storage room in the school, a whole machsan, however big these machsans are, packed with suitcases, packed. He said, I have 3 suitcases in there for every month of the year. For every month of the year, I have 3 suitcases in there. Because that's what I use. I use all the stuff in those suitcases to decorate the class every single month. We do a different decorations in the class. He switches up the whole classroom. That's a person who he doesn't have to do, he loves what he does. So I went in for our PTA, and my first thing was, how's he reading? I read with him at home, and he's not getting it. I don't think he's getting it. And he said to me, he opens up an olive bina, and he gives it to me, and he says, show me how you do it. I'm like, what do you want me to? I started palpitating. I'm like, oh no, he's going to test me on Korea. Like that's how deep. I'm like, what do you want me to do? He's like, he takes the olive bina, turns it in front of him. He says, I'm going to be your son, you be you. Okay? I'm like, oh no, I'm definitely getting all this wrong. And he goes, I'm going to start reading. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make the mistakes I know he makes. And so he starts going. And I correct him. I said, oh, maybe, and I'm doing it nicer than I would even do it in print. Like, maybe let's do that again. And he's like, no, that's wrong. Don't do that. Don't do that. And then he goes to the next word. And I'm trying everything. And he's like, don't do that. Don't do that. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm horrible. What do you want? And he looks at me and he goes, your son's either going to learn how to read or not learn how to read. That's just what's going to happen in life. Let me show you what you should do. He turns around the Aleph Bina, he hands it to me. He says, read it any way you want. He says, don't even say the right word. So I'll never forget it. The word was nimshach. I'll never forget the word. I look at it. I say, nimsach, or nimsach. And he goes, Torah! I said, what is going on? I said, what is going on right now? And he goes, no, keep going. I'm sorry I interrupted. Keep going. And every word I would say, he would just, Torah, that's beautiful. It's Torah. I said, what are you doing? He said, you don't know what I'm doing? I said, no. He took my hand. He leaned over the table. He took my hand. He looks at me and he goes, I want you to imagine that you're 5 years old. Just imagine that you're 5 years old. I said, okay. He said, you're not good at reading. You said you weren't good at reading. I said, no, I'm not good at reading. He said, you have your Aleph Bina in front of you. He said, you have your Aleph Bina in front of you. He said, you're up to a hard word. It's Nimshach. You're up to the hard word. He says, picture yourself saying it. I say, okay. And I'm starting to get. And he says, now I want you to look across at your father. I look across, and he goes, your father is saying, Tyra! And I started bawling. I said, wow! I want to learn. I don't even care if I get it right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He learned how to walk. He learned how to talk. He'll learn how to read. But he needs to have that as slavus. And no Rebbe or stranger or person in the world could give that to him. Nobody. The Rebbe said, leave the correcting to me, because either I'll get it right or I'll get it wrong. Either I'll read or he won't. But there's something you can give him I never could. I could never give him. That reaction of his Abba. That reaction I could never give him, and it'll never mean anything to him. I hate when we do the school bashing. Not because it's right or wrong, but because we feel that if we assign blame, and it's not our blame, we could sleep better at night. Everyone gets up and says, if you throw a kid out, you know what these principals are going through sometimes? If you throw a kid out, you're a right sayah. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm saying for every parent that's calling and saying, if you throw this kid out, you're a tzech. He has 4 parents calling saying, how are you keeping the kid? He's a mazik rabbim, and he's a... Everyone's calling on their side with their thing. He's going to make an enemy with everybody no matter what. And the Rebbeim, why doesn't he give my son more time? Because he gets paid $25,000 a year. He has to hold down 8 jobs. So does his wife, and he has his own kids. He's stressed. We have to stop relying on these people to do anything other than what they're actually supposed to do, which is teach them basically useless information. No, I've had some amazing Rabbeim in my life. I will never forget Masechtas Makos, because Rabbi Weissler one time at the end of a class, and I was not by a stretch of the imagination the best kid in that class. I think it was me. There was a few empty spots. I was that bad, and then there was the rest of the class. They just put me a few levels below. One time, I don't know what it was. I don't know why I applied myself one day. Yeah, it's a weird day. Whatever I watched the night before was not good enough to have disturbed what was happening. Clearly, I needed a distraction from life. So I paid attention to Gemara that day. And at the end of the class, he gives the whole shir. And I didn't ask any good questions, by the way. And this is how you know Machanach. I didn't ask any good questions. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't answer nothing. At the end of the class, he says, boys, before we go to recess, and this yeshiva and this Rabbi, I love them, but it was not this type of a, he goes, before we go to recess, I felt I want to give the class a bracha. And everyone stops, and he goes, I give everyone here a bracha. That every single time you learn, your face should shine like Yossi Bensoussan's face is shining right now. He didn't even like me. I have no, I'm joking. I will never forget Masechtas Makos for as long as I live. We were learning Kufar Kapara that day. I'll never forget the line, the daf, when he went like this to prove to us Kufar Kapara. I'll never forget the whole thing. I remember the tie he was wearing. We're so afraid of negative influences and negative effects on our children. We're so afraid. But the first story I told you, I promise you I forgot until this morning. This story of Rabbi Weissler, I remember weekly. I call upon it weekly. The Mechanchim and the Rebbeim and the schools have such a big responsibility. I don't mean to downplay that. But at the end of the day, they're there so that we can get done what we need to get done. And every other minute, and every other hour, and every other time of our life has to be spent on how am I building this kid. And if you don't want to focus on how to build a kid, that's fine. Just focus on the fact that this beautiful kid is mine. They're mine. We always say, just love them. I always say, I love the line. But that's like telling, it's like going over to an oncologist and saying, so at the end of the day, I remember someone came over to me one time and said, at the end of the day, all you got is before even the Rabbi Trank book, before all the, this guy came over to me and goes, at the end of the day with these kids, and I just was finished dealing with a very difficult situation, and it was the wrong time for this guy to come up, but he goes, at the end of the day with these kids, at the end of the day, it's just love, right? Just, show them you like them, show them you love them, give them a good time. They'll come back. I was like, that's like saying to an oncologist, at the end of the day, you just give them medicine, right? I'm saying, just you give them some medicine, chemo, whatever, give them medicine, they'll be fine. Like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, but there's different medicines, there's different times, there's different ways, there's just so much behind that. Rebbeim need experience and time and all these things to learn what to administer when. A parent has that naturally. We cannot take your place. A Rebbe, a teacher, a principal cannot and should not ever take the parent's place. We are here to support you, but you lead the way. You lead the way. Be in contact with your kids' teachers, be in contact with everyone you can. You lead the way. There is no question, I'm sure Rabbi Kalish can attest to this, I'm sure Rabbi Friedman can attest to this. There is no question, if you were to take a kid in 9th grade, and his parents are in touch with me and are putting into the yeshiva, are invested in the yeshiva, not just their son, but are invested in the yeshiva, they come by, they want to be a part. When you see that boy versus a kid whose parents are not like that, and you watch them go from 9th to 12th, you are dealing with a different product. A completely different product. Our schools are there for what they're there for. They are our child's school. Like your job, it's not your life, hopefully. You're their life.